No, jeez. Hey everybody, it's Mike Jeffers, ChicagoJazz.com, and this is episode 96 of Jazz This Week. I'm here with Abigail Rickards. We're going to be talking Chi-Town Jazz Fest. We're going to be talking about all of her gigs coming up. She's very busy. We're going to talk about how she ended up in Chicago and why she's having ketchup near her hot dog.
Near? I can't even be near the hot dog?
It's near the hot dog. After this. All right, we are back here live at Johnny O's, of course, 35th and Morgan. Now, Abigail, you are not originally from Chicago.
I am not.
You're not?
I'm a lost soul.
Well, you're not a lost soul.
I was born in Boston.
You were born.
Moved around a lot. Settled in New York when I graduated from college. So.
And this is exactly where you wanted to end up, on the corner of 35th and Morgan at Johnny O's, sitting in front of a hot dog.
It's in my diary when I was 12. That's what it said.
All right, so before we talk about ketchup, hot dogs...
That's really the only reason we're here, right?
Well, that's the only reason you're here.
Yeah.
I'd rather find out more about you
okay.
and how you ended up coming to Chicago. She's got a gig coming up for the Chi-Town Jazz Fest. I know that everybody is very interested in that because it goes to such a great cause. But you have an interesting background because you, as you said, you grew up in Boston, you ended up in New York, you ended up in Chicago, and you're obviously got different releases out and everything else. So why don't we just start right from the beginning? How did you get involved with music?
It was a cold day in Boston when I was born. Oh, not that far back. You don't want to go that far.
Did you know Matt Damon?
No. He's a little older than I am. How old is he?
I don't know.
Like
I just
50,
figured
right?
everybody...
He's like 50.
He's not 50.
He's
like,
50.
He's younger than me. No, he's as old as me. Is he as old as me?
Do I ask how old you are? I went to college in Massachusetts for vocal jazz. And right after I graduated, I moved to New York.
What's the name of the college?
I went to UMass Amherst.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, state school. Right after that, I moved out to New York. And I took a year to figure out what I was going to do, and I decided to go back to school. I went to William Patterson in New Jersey. At the time, Mulgrew Miller was there running the program. He's great.
Favorite piano player ever.
Nicest. It's funny, last night we were just talking. I was at the...
Paul Marinaro benefit.
Yes.
That was at the Jazz Showcase. This was last week, if you're watching this.
Yes, when this airs. Last week, I was at this benefit, and one of the hosts was Celine Peterson, who's Oscar Peterson's daughter, and we were talking about Clark Terry, and I was just geeking out, and then at the end, she gave me an autographed picture of her dad, and I started to cry. I'm like, you have no idea how much this means to me. So there are a couple of, I told her, I said, him and Mulgrew Miller in my head are like so.
Me too. Me too. Unbelievable.
Amazing.
But that's a whole other show.
That's a whole other thing. So anyway, I lived in New York for about 8 years. Well, when I was in grad school, I met my husband, Dan, at William Patterson. We got married, and he decided to apply to PhD programs, and the one he really wanted was Northwestern. And I had one friend in Chicago, and I knew it was a good jazz scene here. I was a little bit fed up with New York.
Well, you were playing, though, out there.
I was definitely
playing.
I was playing. But, for every bit of playing I did that paid almost nothing, I was working like 14-hour days, 7 days a week, doing all sorts of other stuff to try to... teaching kids classes, piano lessons, you name it. And it just became exhausting. Like, it didn't seem like a way for me to sustain.
With New York, and I know you know a lot of people, I know a lot of people out there, so I want to get your take. There's so many people in New York, which means it's great because the playing level gets higher and higher and higher because everybody's pushing, but it also, I would assume, is bad because it's saturated, which means clubs and restaurants can get people to do things for not as much money as you could somewhere else where there might be a demand, right?
Not as much money is the understatement of the century.
Yeah.
Like, if I paid to play certain gigs, and that's not uncommon. I mean, I could get some of the best known people. It would blow your mind out for $100. Like it,
I believe it.
And that's a fairly middle of the road paying gig there. They're like, yeah, I'll go up for $100. Nice jazz club, good band. And of course, like, you're not so worried about the money when you're playing with a great band. Like, if you call somebody and you say, I have these people, you want to join us? They're like, well, yeah, of course I do.
Yeah.
But you got to make a living. Like, there's a middle ground to that.
Well, and also the people I know, they're usually use that stuff as like keeping their stuff together, working on stuff because they make their money when they go out on the road.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it is. But of course, getting out on the road, fighting through the crowds just to get onto a band, to get out on the road is a whole other story.
Well, and
sure.
I didn't have the luxury of really being in a band. As a singer, you're naturally the
leader,
band
right?
leader.
Yeah.
So you find what you find, and you don't get pulled into a lot of things. You tend to be the
Yeah.
puller,
You're the entrepreneur
I
of the
am.
music scene.
which was tough.
Which you still are.
I still
and
am.
you came here, and then
I
you just
came
took
here.
the whole city over.
I did. It's a hostage, really. A lot of people owe me a lot of favors right now.
One day, the iron hand of Abigail.
I'm
going to
pop up at your front door one day.
So Dan got the gig, got the acceptance into Northwestern, and you
we
had
were
had
like,
enough of New York, so the
"Let's go, man.
decision
Let's
was
go."
easy to get out of there
Very
for a little
easy.
while.
And so I came, actually, I remember, I was just talking about this last night with Kimberly Gordon. I came 2 weeks ahead of Dan because he had to finish a job. And I went out every single night to every club, every restaurant that I knew had music, and met, you were one of them, met as many people as I could. I
met
took you to lunch.
You did, that's
We
right.
went to some diner around
Bridgeport,
here.
the Bridgeport restaurant, just down the street.
Little plug. And I just found out who plays, who sings, who books things, who is a fan of things, just to talk to everybody I could. And it was a very lucrative 2 weeks of getting to know people. I did sessions. That's how I met Tim Fitzgerald, who was on last week. I met Tom Beitzes that day too, who's on my upcoming album, both of them. So it just, things happened very quickly when I moved here.
Well, it also, bringing up that point, the networking thing is really
And
important.
that's what I was going to say. They happen very quickly, but my advice to, 22-year-old Abby would have been, you have to help yourself. Like, you cannot sit around and complain that things aren't happening and nothing's falling into your lap, because life doesn't work that way.
Don't even get me started.
You know that more
I know
than
all about
anybody.
that,
Nobody
yes.
knows the hustle better than you.
I know all about that, and that's a whole other story.
Yes. We could
gotta
give a
have
little
that-
master class on that where we talk about just kicking butts.
Maybe we'll just start like a series. We've got ketchup on hot dogs,
We have a lot of things to talk
New
about,
York
Mike.
jazz scene, the problems with lazy people. I mean, the whole thing.
You
All
make
right.
your own destiny.
That's right.
Right?
We should call Tony Robbins.
I think we should.
That's
I think
it. Done.
I think we're
Done. So you're in Chicago.
I'm in Chicago.
Dan's
Picture
going.
it.
Dan's going to
He's
school.
getting his PhD.
And you're singing around town, but are you noticing yet that it's a difficult situation to get like steady gigs?
No, it was actually much easier than in New
Okay.
York at first. And so I'm looking around and, thinking about what I wanted to do. And I became friends with Sarah Marie Young, who I
Great.
adore. I saw her last night as well. She's fantastic. One of the best singers I've ever heard in my life. And we were having lunch and she's like, I play piano at some gig. It's like Stetson's. Remember when Stetson's was a thing?
Yeah.
And she's like, "Do you play any piano?" I said, "A little." And we were at her apartment. She's like, "Just play something for me." So I played something. She's like, "Yeah, you're fine for there. Like they're not looking for virtuosic piano players. She's a competent pianist who sings." So I emailed the guy, and that was it. And I started. That was my first playing gig, and that just sort of took off. And now I play all of my gigs. I play usually 6 or 7 nights a week with a trio, or solo, or duo.
And your chops obviously are getting better and better and better by
They
doing
are.
that, right?
I don't think I'll ever be able to say I'm a pianist because I've been privileged enough, like we were just talking about Mulgrew Miller,
Yep.
to play with the finest pianists in all the world, and I'll never be able to be like, oh, I'm a very decent pop piano player, and I'm a very competent. And Howard Reich said that about me. I'm a competent piano player.
Well, that's
I'll take that. When I read that was like, it was like a glowing review, and he said, well, her piano player was competent. I'm like, I'm competent. Like, I have arrived. Because I'm so self-conscious about it,
Sure.
that because it's a secondary
well,
instrument.
you didn't come up playing that, so you're never going to think that you're
never. But it has, it's funny. Somebody said to me the other day that they had seen me, and then they saw me like 2 or 3 years later, and they're like, it's a huge difference
Really?
from So I'm glad because I've been working on it.
It's always what I talk about when people ask me about the jazz scene. Everybody always wants to lament about the 70s or
hear
even
a
the
lot of that.
80s about Rush
Rush
Street.
Street, yeah.
But things evolve, and last time I checked, we're in the 21st century, 2018, and we're just lucky that there's still live music happening anywhere, and people are
agree.
seeing a value in having it. So I'm always telling people, sure, we don't have clubs that have 6-night-a-week gigs anymore like they used to for 3-month contracts and everything else, but it's shifted. So you're in a restaurant now where there's people there, and it's all in the presentation, and I'm sure you're going to agree with me on this. No matter where you are or what you're doing, you always want to do 110%
Absolutely.
sound dynamite because you never know who's there and who's listening, and it always leads to something else.
Well, and my other advice, which you completely understand this too, I'm preaching to the choir here, is, when I found out about playing the piano, and I told you I've been on gigs where they're asking us to shift in a little bit different direction, and being versatile has been my best friend for working.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I have a trio now that I play with all the time, and we can play most styles. Like, we can get by in most styles. So when people ask us, can you do more of a Motown thing, or do you know any modern pop or any, contemporary stuff? Yeah, we do, because we made an effort, because we knew that was going to be a part of what, and there's no shame in that. There's good music everywhere. People get very uptight about jazz and,
Well, but I mean, the way the world is now, a lot of people don't even know who Count Basie is.
It's true.
Or was, I should say, or Ellington or anything. They know the tunes. They know the Sinatra versions of the tunes.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be open to doing anything, because it's always been my contention, if you get them in and they hear good music, they're in, because then they don't care what style
Well,
it
that's
is.
the
They
thing.
just
We
want to
do
feel
play.
it.
We'll play standards
Yeah.
in there and mix it in things that they may not have heard that we want them to hear. And I love jazz. I'll always love jazz.
Sure.
And we do a ton of it, but I make sure we can do a lot of other stuff
Yeah.
too. It's really helpful.
So your vocal style is more like a New York style, obviously, because you came from the East Coast. So are there certain influences in your, that you grew up listening to? Is there a certain concept that you're thinking about when you're performing, phrasing, anything like that?
It's funny, when I was in New York, obviously in college I had really immersed myself in the great singers of, Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan and that stuff. And that's still ingrained in me. And then going to New York and meeting more modern singers, I studied with Dina DeRose for a while. Do you know Dina? She's a
I know
piano
the
player,
name, yeah.
singer. She moved to Europe, and she lives in Switzerland now. Austria.
Austria.
Yes.
All right.
So there were a lot of great modern things going on, and I could listen to that. When I moved to Chicago, I noticed everyone said, "Oh, it's a blues city. It's a blues city," and I didn't quite understand what that meant per se. And now I get it, and I think that the Chicago sound has infiltrated my being.
Do you think it's for jazz? I mean, obviously Chicago
It's
blues.
a
but do you
bluesier feel in a lot of
think
things.
so?
I think there's like a dry, this is what we're talking about, the New York sound versus Chicago sound.
Right.
I think the New York sound is a polished, dry, precision swing.
Okay.
That's
Makes
how I
sense
think
to
of
me.
it.
Well, that makes sense,
And
yeah.
then when you're describing the differences, and then I don't want to use the word sloppy because that has a negative connotation.
Right.
But when I think of something really blues, it's a more laid back, like a dirtier kind of swing. And so then I hear that.
I think I think it is laid back compared to the New York.
Yeah.
Because I think New York, obviously, there's a lot of intensity happening there, and there's also that
People
massive,
in a hurry too.
Oh, they're in a hurry, but I also think that there's that competition thing, right? Everybody wants to throw down every time they play, so there's that intensity thing happening. Whereas in Chicago, some people are just like, it's a little bit more mellow, a little bit
Yeah.
more relaxed, because there isn't that competition. People aren't trying to like standing over there saying, "Hey, let me sit in because I'm going to cut you." I mean, isn't that right?
Have you talked to all the singers?
Here?
Yeah.
Are there singers standing off stage?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
They're like,
Oh. Oh, Abigail, you have some steadies too happening, right? So
I have
let's
a lot
talk
of steadies.
about that.
Yeah, I've
We've
been
got
fortunate for a few years to have steadies almost every night.
Eddie V's,
Eddie
Tuesdays
V's.
and Thursdays,
We've
right
been
on
there
West
almost
Street.
4 years now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So-
That's a cool room. I've played there once or twice, and it's really hip. The food's dynamite, but it's really hip where they have the piano. I mean, you're there. It's almost like a throwback kind of lounge thing.
Yeah,
because
there's
you
a
can-
lounge and a dining room,
Yeah.
and you're fully expected in the lounge to understand that it is a music room.
Yes.
So
Yes. And what kind of stuff are you doing there? Just a mixture of everything?
we sort of morphed a little bit. They shifted some into, we were doing all standards when we started, and then we started incorporating some more blues influenced stuff, and then we were covering some pop tunes, and those went over well. So we do a lot of, which is a happening thing now, the pop tunes in a jazz. idiom. And somebody referred to it last night as the Jamie Cullum style, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
laughed at, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think John Deidemeyer said something like that. He's like,
Okay.
yeah, I want like a Jamie Cullum style. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. It's sort of a lot of pop and a lot of jazz, but sort of morphed into your own sound.
You're
That's a
kind of mixing it
groove-based.
together
Yeah.
because then you can infiltrate both audiences and
Exactly.
everybody can understand it.
So
you're
I
there
found
on-
that's been creeping into everything I do, everywhere. And we just recorded this album that's coming out this summer, and we ended up putting a lot of that stuff on there too.
Really?
We ended up doing a Ray LaMontagne tune and
yeah.
a Jeff Buckley tune. So we did Tears for Fears. Like, we did a lot of.
So you're there Tuesdays and Thursdays?
Yep.
Where else are you?
I'm out at Perry's on Mondays and Wednesdays.
that's
That's
in
in
Oak Brook?
Oak Brook. Yep.
Okay.
On Sundays right now, I'm at Pete Miller's in Evanston. They just opened a Naperville location.
They did. They did.
Yeah, but I'm at the Evanston one.
Okay, so
So-
that's every Sunday.
Yep.
Is that solo or what?
That one's solo.
Okay.
And Wednesdays and Saturdays, I bop around a little bit.
Okay. And then, of course, the Chi-Town Jazz Fest.
That's what we're here for.
March
right now.
8th, coming up here at Winters
I'll be
Jazz
at Winters.
Club.
I'll be the second set. There's somebody.
Whiffler's New Orleans
That's right.
Quartet will be there. Matt Whiffler's New Orleans Quartet will be there at 7:30, and then Abigail starts at 9:30. And as we talked about on the show last week when we interviewed Lyle from the Care for Real, one of the beneficiaries of the Chi-Town Jazz Fest, all of the money that's collected at the door gets donated back to such a great cause,
Yep.
Feed the Hunger here in Chicago.
I think we can thank John Mulder for that, right? Isn't
John
he?
Mulder's the artistic director. He started the entire thing. This is the 9th year.
Yeah.
So this is, it's really catching on. It's a great cause, obviously, but it's going to be a great night over at Winters. So tell
We're
us a little
psyched.
bit about what they're going to be able to hear and who's playing with you.
Well, we're gonna do some of the tunes that we recorded. It's gonna be Tim and Sean Jacoby, and Kurt Luby's gonna play the drums with me.
Okay.
And then I believe Tom Veitzes is going to come for most of it as well. I told Tom he didn't need to take
For most of it.
because he plays
I
it
know.
up the street.
I know.
But I said
Tom
you know,
Veitzes, the man of mystery.
Tom Veitzes, you never know where or when
He
he's
just
going to pop
appears.
up. Last night he was there and then he was gone.
Here's what we're going to do. We are going to have you, Ketchup, buy a hot dog right now. She's going to put it there, and I'm actually going to taste this and
So
see
you
what a
need
hot
to
dog
dip it.
tastes
You're not
like.
even brave enough to just put
Oh,
it right
no,
on the dog, are you?
No, I gotta dip it. All right, so I'm gonna dip this because she's been bugging
do
me
it
about
first.
this.
It's
Using
cold
French
ketchup
fry.
too.
This is a cold hot dog now because we've been talking for 20 minutes. All right, so here we go. I love hot dogs. I love Chicago-style hot dogs. Johnny O's hot dogs. She's from New York, so she's trying to convince me of this ketchup thing, but she puts sauerkraut on stuff out there too. It's just not happening. All right, let me see.
We're going to take a beat.
All right, Abigail,
All right, Mike.
I'm so glad you stopped by.
I
For the
can't tell you. This is the highlight of my year.
Thank you for stopping by. You got to get to another gig. I've got to get this edited somehow.
Good luck
I have
with
no
that.
idea how. No, it's fascinating. I'm glad you stopped by. Now,
Hey,
you've
I'll
gotta-
come back anytime.
We've got to have you come back. Maybe we'll have a round table.
I think we need to do like a trivia, food tasting. Like we need a more recreational show than the
I did have somebody-
educational base of
I
the.
did have somebody suggest that I should have somebody make a burrito the size of my head and actually measure it and try it out. I said, well, what does that have to do with jazz?
Why-
I said,
I just
who
really
cares
likes
about
burritos.
jazz? All right, thanks for watching, everyone. Of course, Chi-Town Jazz Fest, March 7th through the 11th at various clubs throughout the city. All the information is ChiTownJazzFestival.com. Abigail Rickards, what's your
Mike
website?
Jeffers.
Abigail Rickards.
.com.
All right, and of course, if we don't see you somewhere this weekend, hopefully we
You're
will
dead
see
to
you
us.
somewhere out on the scene.
Oh!